Hello and welcome again. This is Luz Sanabria Reyes, Voluntary Agency Liaison for Emergency Management Recovery Unit. Today I am introducing the second video of the series of 12 videos that we will be posting on our Emergency Management YouTube channel and other sites. Today's video is all about our voluntary agency liaisons and the work they do in the community during and after a disaster. I have with us today Phil Triplett, the voluntary agency liaison for the North Carolina Emergency Management. How are you, Phil?
I'm doing well. I hope you are.
Oh, I'm doing wonderful. Can you please tell us a little bit about who you are and the work that you have done with emergency management?
Sure. I've been with emergency management as a reservist and as an employee for 10 years, and primarily in individual assistance, which is households and individuals helping the recovery process. I've done damage assessments on homes. I have worked over the years with our survivors through their process of disaster case management, where we try to help them become as whole as they can in a new normal, depending on the situation, whether it's a flood or a mudslide or a hurricane, which North Carolina is number 2 behind Florida with, and tornadoes. So it's a wide-ranging experience that we have with things like that, that you have to look at everyone as being a new adventure, because that's what it is. Each one is a little different.
We also have on this video, we have Louis Carroll from FEMA. He is a FEMA Voluntary Agency Liaison. Hi, Louis, how are you?
I'm doing well. How are you?
Good, good, thank you. Louis, can you tell us a little bit about your role in disaster recovery and your support that you provide to the North Carolina Voluntary Agency Liaisons?
Sure. You know, as Phil said earlier, you know, I'm when we have a presidential declaration, I come out to assist Phil. You know, usually it's multiple counties and that, and so we'll bring a team out of individuals, and I'll be the lead of the team. And if we do mostly what the state requests us to do, if we need to go to some meetings because of conflicts, we'll do that. We help support or develop long-term recovery groups, which is essential after a disaster in order to start that recovery road on there. And then we also work with helping people with their unmet needs, because like everybody thinks, FEMA doesn't make anybody whole. So we work with finding resources for those needs that people need that we can't fund. So, you know, we're there to support the state in any way that we possibly can.
Good, good. And my experience before becoming a voluntary agency liaison, I started in the recovery process and relief work back when Hurricane Matthew impacted the state of North Carolina, and that's how I met Phil. I was a disaster case management manager in 2016, probably for about a year. I did that work working one-on-one with the families that were impacted. And then I moved on to leading a long-term recovery group, which are the organizations that usually VAL supports. So I have a little bit of background of working with Phil at community level. I do think that the work that the VALs do is necessary and very important with connecting the community and the state. Phil, so can you tell us about the work that you do, the collaboration that takes place with you and FEMA? How does that support the communities? And just tell me a little bit more about that collaboration that takes place on your side.
To me, it's all about relationships and building trust in those relationships with FEMA, with our voluntary groups that come in to help with the recovery process, and the communities themselves, where they need to understand, and everybody needs to understand, that level of trust that if we say we're going to do something, then we do follow through with it, or do our best to do what we need to do to help them work toward putting their lives back together. As Lewis said earlier, it's never going to be 100% just because of the way it is in the world now with the different disasters and the pandemic and everything else. But if you have a good, solid relationship, which I believe that we have built in North Carolina with all the long-term groups that are still up and running from Matthew forward, that's really what makes the difference in them wanting to stay active and stay motivated, and even expanding into areas that they originally did not have set up in their bylaws, because they have that heart and passion like what a voluntary agency liaison needs to have in order to do the job well and to do it correctly to help people out.
And when you say bylaws, you're referring to the voluntary organizations like long-term recovery groups, the formation process in part. So our next video will be about long-term recovery groups and CVOADs, a little bit more explanation about what those groups do in terms of recovery and relief. So Luis, can you tell us on, on your side of the work as a FEMA VAL, what do you think, what state VALs can do to make the process and the work easier in the collaboration between the state and the federal agency?
I think the biggest challenge is getting the long-term recovery groups to understand that this is not something that's going to be a one and done quickly. Like I said, long-term recovery. So it's going to be a year, 2 years, 3 years. Some take longer. Katrina took almost 10 years. So trying to get everybody back to where they belong and trying to keep them active, just don't start up and then shut down once you get done. Keep going, because you have those local disasters that you could work on in that. I think that's the biggest challenge that we at FEMA and at the state level is trying to keep those long-term recovery groups going.
Yeah, absolutely. I do agree with you. And, having worked at that community level and having been part of a long-term recovery group, I can tell you that it is a little bit frustrating at times, and the resources sometimes they don't flow as we wish they would to be able to provide the community with the resources they need. But it is true. It is a long-term recovery and can take more than 10 years sometimes, depending on the size of the disaster. Phil, can you talk a little bit more about what do you think, why it's beneficial to have a North Carolina state VAL?
When I started working in individual assistance, North Carolina didn't have a VAL program. They had one at one time, I believe, for, well, I can't remember if it was Floyd or which one, but it dwindled. Some of our long-term recovery groups first formed in 1996. They're still working. Some are not, and that's because of the lack of a disaster in the area. But when Matthew came along, it was a real struggle to get some of the long-term groups, for a variety of reasons, to become active or to get one to form if there wasn't one in that county prior to it. And so it took a lot of work to make that happen. Fortunately, with FEMA's help, bringing in extra bodies, because I couldn't be everywhere at one time as often as the meetings were, and all the other things that we're involved with, it was really helpful to get those 15 or so long-term groups up and going and being strong enough to support the community, because a disaster begins local and it ends local. And I've really tried to get them to understand that it is a marathon and not a sprint. And because of that, they need to stay busy and they need to stay active. And most of those 15 did stay active, so that when Florence came along, we could focus more on groups that we wanted to get started in other counties to support their county, and just make sure that the 15 or so were still active. And we pretty much doubled that number of counties in North Carolina, and we even have one forming in Western North Carolina now, which is something that we've been working on for a while. And once they understand that a disaster is something they can define, whether it's economic, like with the pandemic, or the pandemic itself, or a mudslide, or whatever natural event it happens to be, even the earthquake that we had in Allegheny County. That's helpful for them to be there and to get active and make things happen. And by them staying up and going, it's a lot easier for them to make things happen. As I tell some people, it's in a disaster is not the time to start passing out business cards as to what you can do. You should already know what that is. So that's where it's essential. I see also with the state VAL position, in keeping those during blue sky days, as we call it, when nothing is going on, working with those long-term groups to stay active. Situations can come up where a tornado happens, we don't meet the criteria to have a state declaration or a federal declaration. If a long-term group is active in that area, as we've had a couple, then they know where all the resources are locally, as well as being able to rely on us to help them find those pieces needed for the unmet needs, and makes the recovery process much easier for everybody, from the survivor to the people that want to come and help. And that's why, to me, it's essential that North Carolina continue to have a state VAL program like what we have. That I'm not sure how it is in other states, but I like overall how we're able to act and help people, help them be prepared for situations that come up, and have those strong local long-term groups to help out in the county, because they know the people, I don't. They know their neighbors, I don't. I get to know some of them, but it is a good thing to have that available so that you have that extension. And some long-term groups even start helping other long-term groups that are trying to start. We've had that in Florence. That's just really good to see the neighbor helping neighbor.
And how about you, Louis? Why do you think it's important for the state of North Carolina to have voluntary agency liaisons?
Well, I think to add to everything that Phil said, the most important thing is that no matter what, those locals, it is a local disaster. It does have to be handled by the community. But if they ever need assistance, knowing that that state VAL is there, that they can go back to get assistance from, or to get some, technical assistance, whether it be resources or just information, is critical. They feel they have a representative there at the state level, and they're not a forgotten, entity out there. It's not like, okay, hey, it's a disaster, you need to do this. You're there for them all the time, and that just builds that relationship up.
Absolutely. Again, talking from experience as being in the on the other side of the job, being in the community and leading a long-term recovery group, I can say that it was very beneficial having Phil in my meetings, in the long-term recovery meetings, talking about the programs that the state was having and giving us updates on the recovery process through, both hurricanes that we experienced here in North Carolina, which were Matthew and Florence. And so this ends our discussion for today. I do want to thank you both for accepting the invitation and come and speak with us. I am very grateful to now be part of this team. And to our viewers, thank you for stopping by and watching this video. I hope that the information that Phil and Louis provided today gives you a little idea of what the voluntary agency liaisons do for recovery and relief for the efforts here in North Carolina. I am the newest member of this team, and so until next time, I'll see you next video.